Minister of India, Dr. Shankar, to address the gathering.
Shri Rishikesh Patel ji, Education Minister of Gujarat, Professor Bimal N. Patel, Vice Chancellor of the University, faculty members, graduating students, other students who will graduate, families and guests. Namaste Bharat, and I am really pleased to join you today on the occasion of the third convocation of the Rashtriya Raksha University. There are two reasons for that. To be associated with an institution dealing with national security, which has been my own lifelong preoccupation, is itself a privilege. And when that happens in Gujarat, the state that has sent me to Parliament, it is doubly so. So, keeping this in mind, I would like today to share some thoughts with which the university and its students grapple with every day, the contemporary nature of security challenges. The orthodox definition of security revolves around a mix of external and internal threats. We would naturally think in terms of defending our borders, securing our interests abroad, countering terrorism, separatism and left-wing extremism, and ensuring law and order, effective law and order. Obviously, the quality and security of our national capacities is central to all these objectives, and ensuring their well-being is equally important. The term critical infrastructure emerges prominently from this consideration. The totality of these concerns were addressed through military preparations, through hardening in different ways, intelligence, policing, law enforcement, and investigation. However, as the world globalized and technology advanced, the very nature of what concerns us has also undergone a transformation. Many aspects of our progress come with their accompanying downside. The resulting paradox is that the more we prosper, the greater and more varied are the vulnerabilities. An obvious example is the salience of cybersecurity in the digital age. We have since moved on to debates about deep fakes using AI. Another is the impact of fake news and disinformation that can shape mass opinion in a dramatic way. The COVID pandemic, too, is a reminder of how exposed we are in a globalized environment, and indeed, how vulnerable we have become to supply chains. In fact, the international economic system is itself a structural challenge because its relative efficiencies have also created deep dependencies, just waiting to be exploited. The new has, however, not been replaced. The new, however, has not replaced the old. They coexist. They coexist, making our life more complicated. And security itself is developing increasing facets, starting from how to define challenges to the traditional incarnations and more modern concerns. Increasingly, it is all more and more about data and tracking, hardening and breaching. As we were discussing in your labs, yesterday's mission impossible is not just today's mission possible, but increasingly mission necessary. Now, where to draw a line was always a political conundrum when it comes to security, perhaps even more so now. Being a democratic polity, we have to strike a balance between freedoms and the misuse. And we often see across the world, many struggle to do so. Some because they can't, others because they won't. I therefore ask you today to reflect on 5 propositions in that regard, because the answers to those reflect our approach to security. So ask yourself, 1, does it take an act of violence or the spilling of blood for a happening to be judged as injurious? Is the prevention of preparations and spread, if it has already taken place, are they not justified? 2, if a nation's unity and integrity are weakened and alternative loyalties sought to be created, can we really remain indifferent? For that matter, should people be defensive about our patriotism? 3, if support is given abroad to separatism or worse, should we display equanimity? 4, if national development, especially critical infrastructure, is impeded, do we demonstrate indifference? And 5, when influence operations target India, can we really afford to be complacent? Each of these questions is a debate in itself. Cumulatively, they are today a national challenge. In responding, let us start by examining the more traditional problems that India confronts. To begin with, international relations is by its very nature a competitive activity. The roughly 200 nations in existence today endeavor on a daily basis to advance their interests, if necessary, at the expense of others. This has both offensive and defensive aspects. What links them, of course, is comprehensive national power that reflects relevant capacities and resilience. While this applies to all nations, India faces some specific circumstances. Its competitive aspects are more prominent because of certain historical and geopolitical realities. It is also relevant that many of our borders are not settled and have thereby become key in our security calculus. Where our own society is concerned, the very pluralism that is so much our defining characteristic has been exploited from time to time by external forces. The short point is that even by the traditional metrics of security assessments, India faces exceptional challenges. In responding, we have to consider the inherited issues of development that derive from the era of colonialism. How effectively we used our opportunity is a legitimate question, especially as some others in a similar position have fared much better in the first six decades after our independence. Strenuous efforts have since been made, especially in the last decade, to correct the shortcomings of the previous ones. The overall development of our national strengths that we have seen since 2014 have clearly had positive repercussions in the security field. Whether it is external, internal, or at the border, there are some basic components of these capabilities that all of us are familiar with. How to acquire and develop weapons and build related capacities has not only been at the core of our defense policies, but even of our diplomacy. Indeed, a large part of our geopolitical calculations rests on which nations are likely to be reliable partners during times of stress. We therefore embed the security factor deeply into our strategy and into our diplomacy when we engage a competitive world. The magnitude of what we seek naturally reflects our growing interests, greater aspirations, and in fact the nature of warfare and of security. What would be considered relevant to national security itself has a very much broader definition. We have long been conversant with the concept of dual technology that has extended even more to encapsulate critical and emerging technologies. It has been a signal achievement of Indian diplomacy that we have been successful in forging relationships with multiple and often competing powers to this end. Logistics has also been, in fact, always been key to security and warfare. Yet, in our country, this has been a neglected dimension till recently. Take our border areas facing China as an illustration, and let the figures speak for themselves. Today, road construction is 2x, bridging and tunneling 3x, and the border infrastructure budget 4x compared to what was the commitment and achievement of the last decade. But it is not just the length and number of the roads, tunnels, and bridges, but the consequences that they have for our operational capabilities. In the last decade, we have seen all-weather connectivity to Ladakh and to Tawang, focus on access to critical passes along the LAC, and the construction, in fact, of the world's highest motorable road over the Umlingla Pass. Consider the implications when the closing of the crucial Zojila access is halved today to just 73 days. And similarly, when the opening of 16 critical passes happens much ahead of previous years, saving efforts and costs in terms of air sustenance. My purpose in highlighting the change with regard to infrastructure is fourfold. One, to emphasize how dearly complacency and neglect can cause us in the domain of security. We saw that graphically in 1962, but sadly, its lessons were not apparently learnt by those who came later either. It is only now that we are approaching border infrastructure with the seriousness that it deserves. The second is the imperative of a larger assessment that guides security-related policies and activities. Misjudging the posture of neighbors and believing that neglect of border areas is in itself a defense has been costly as well. It too has required strenuous efforts since 2014 to be corrected. Third, the application of new technologies and modern construction techniques has yielded visible results. This has also been accompanied by a reform of organizations like the BRO. And fourth, the results of an all-of-the-government approach towards pressing national challenges have been overcoming the silos of the past. There are lessons from this experience which could be applied across a range of other problems. Now, whether it is equipment for building infrastructure or weaponry for our armed forces, the concerns of external dependence have long dogged us. From time to time, efforts at indigenization have been made, but never as seriously and as systemically as they now are. Atmanirbhar Bharat is itself an expression of national security because it mitigates others exploiting our vulnerabilities. This has taken different forms in different domains, but most notably that of Make in India. The fact is that the talent and the ability for that has not only existed, but in fact has been steadily growing. What was required was the leadership, the vision, and the commitment to bring it together and make it a truly national endeavor. When defense startups are encouraged, when defense procurement is expanded, when domestic defense procurement is expanded, when new technologies like drones are facilitated, and when the Prime Minister himself flies in the Tejas, the nation sees the difference. It is not just a question of meeting our own needs. There is an international defense market out there that India has started to target. The 16,000 crore of exports currently not only just highlight the potential to grow. Friends, the progress of nations in history has to great measure reflected the progress of technology. Indeed, big strategic shifts have taken place when one or another country has acquired a decisive technology advantage over the rest of the world. At the very least, the compulsions of competition require us to stay at least abreast of latest developments. And therein lies another source of concern when it comes to security. In the post-1992 reform era, we understandably opened up our economy, but we did not pay adequate attention to safeguarding and upgrading our manufacturing. On the contrary, there were pundits who pronounced that it was not our competence to even go down this path. But the simple truth is that without robust manufacturing, a nation like India can never be updated on technology, leave alone emerge as a leader in particular domains. I'm not even getting into the argument whether opening up to subsidized exports of others at the cost of our own enterprises, including SMEs, whether this was prudent. More developed economies than us, in fact, are today paying the price for that choice. The fact is that only when there is a real commitment to take manufacturing forward that we will see significant investments in R&D. Similarly, such a commitment will become a driver to enhance the quality of our infrastructure. And there is a human resource dimension to all of that as well. So, reversing the indifference of the past, the thrust in manufacturing today is not only seeing the production-linked incentive program, the Gati Shakti mission, and the ease of doing business ethos, but has also catalyzed progress in skilling, in innovation, and in startups. Economic and technology capacities go hand in hand, and both are equally crucial for India's security. The relevance of various yojanas that we have witnessed since 2014 also bears thought in this context. We are used to actually thinking of them in isolation and evaluating their impact in that particular field which the yojana focuses on. But just think about it, connect the dots, and a larger picture of radical transformation emerges that bodes well for our nation's security. When we look comprehensively at health, nutrition, cleanliness, electricity and water connection, education, housing, support to farmers, financial inclusion, digital connectivity and employment, each one is a different set of yojanas, but connect them and you will see that the outlines of New India, of Viksit Bharat, is becoming much sharper. It is based on this broad-based, interconnected growth that the foundation for sustainable development is being laid. Deep national strengths and capacities require societal progress at all levels in all fields. Across the world, the experience of the COVID pandemic has widened definitions of security. This is not rocket science. Somewhere in all of us, there was always an incipient awareness about this. But what a period of extreme and prolonged stress, like COVID, has done for both psychology and for policy is to bring out these latent concerns to the forefront. Other autonomous developments have heightened such feelings. Notable among them are the impact of the conflict and climate events, as also trade disruptions of various kinds. The most existential is, of course, food security. Expanding production is one aspect, but continuously improving value adds, storage, and resilience is no less important. That is why the campaign to produce and consume millets and their products has resonated so strongly, not just in India, but actually across the developing world. In the past, our food dependence has been a source of vulnerability for us with security implications. In a world of climate change, we must strategize to ensure that this never again recurs. Where health security is concerned, the pandemic itself is a telling message. How to ensure reliability of ingredients, reliability of the flow of ingredients is a natural concern, one that would require much more of the supply chain to be under our national control. Widening accessibility and ensuring affordability, as the government is currently doing through the Jan Aushadhi program, that too has its own repercussions. Energy security, the challenge of energy security, is one with which we have long struggled. Till now, what has been managed through a combination of trade and of diplomacy, that the future today offers more answers, especially if we invest in green and clean technologies. Not surprisingly, that is exactly where the government is focusing today. We have got skilled at hedging the risks of external energy exposure. But when it comes to fossil fuels, that same awareness, leave alone response, is not yet there in much of the world when it comes to renewables. A serious consideration of the security implications of external dependence on renewables is very much the need of the day. Water security is another looming issue where new thinking on harvesting, on usage and conservation has already made its impact across the country. The growing demand of an expanded population on water resources, the emergence of new technologies in this particular field, and apprehensions emanating from climate change, all of them today combined and contribute to the need for a changing conversation. Security considerations also drive the contemporary debate about the merits of globalization. The COVID experience, as I noted, has encouraged the quest for strategic autonomy in different regions, defined increasingly in economic and in technology resilience. In fact, global economic debates are today particularly focused on reliability and redundancy of supply chains. For India, this is an opportunity. With the right partnerships it can open up doors to the manufacturing world at a much higher level of technology. The counterpart of this in the digital domain is the importance of trust and of transparency. It could be in telecoms, in apps and games, or in fact in data in any form. Trusted providers and partners are today at a premium. The challenge of over-concentration today has spurred a desire for re-globalization on different terms. In a world of AI, of EVs, of chips, of drones, and critical technologies and resources, new goals for national security are being devised along with new practices and new partnerships. But as I noted earlier, the old has not entirely gone away. As we contemplate global challenges like maritime security, climate events, natural disasters, or terrorism, there is still a very powerful case for international cooperation. In India's case, this ranges from emerging as a first responder, as we have done increasingly this decade, to developing greater interoperability with partners and to sharing experiences, as this university is doing. Terrorism has long been a particular challenge for India, and our mission to delegitimize it and to counter it remains unrelenting. As the world has seen, it is a domain that draws particular energy from technology and from technology advancements. Counter-terrorism, therefore, challenges both our capabilities and our imaginations. As our interests expand, we have to strive to also contribute to the security of others. This may be in the immediate neighborhood, or it may be in terms of financial, health, and energy support to them. Or indeed, to a larger constituency like the Global South, to whom we provided vaccines during the COVID, and development and security support even otherwise. Globalization also brings a particular security responsibility to a people engaged in a global workplace. Our framework cannot remain one just at home. As Indian professionals, students, expatriates and visitors spread across the world, it is imperative that they do so confidently. The Vande Bharat mission during the pandemic was a demonstration of our capabilities and our commitment to their welfare. In conflict situations, whether it is operations Devi Shakti, Ganga, Kaveri or Ajay, there have been a full application of national resources for rescue and return. Welfare mechanisms have been established as SOPs, and these will need constant refining. In a digital age, where narratives can be powerful and disinformation better masked, security faces challenges of a very different nature. Radicalization, even from a distance, can be extraordinarily disruptive. At the same time, there are persistent efforts to delegitimize the elected, distort debates, and define political correctness. Much of this arises from the interests of a few that pass off as the views of the many. The information facet has its financial counterparts, which is key to its furtherance. These call for a very different set of skills if they have to be effectively exposed and negated. Friends, ensuring effective national security today is a far more complex task. It requires more interdisciplinary training and education and varied experience. As India rises, these challenges will grow because the stakes for us and the stakes for the world will be much higher. That may mean more responsibilities, but also different opportunities. As you all set out in the world, I convey my best wishes for your success, knowing that each one of you is committed to make the best of your era, the Amrit Kal that we have just entered, to build a Viksit Bharat. Thank you for your attention. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat.